Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janavama Giri Gopi Janavama Giri Which number verse is it? 40, 41? 41? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, Chapter 8, Dhruva Maharaj leaves home, text number 41. Dharmata kama moksha kyam. Push this table in a little bit. Dharmatakama mokshakyam yachet shreya atmanaha ekam yeva harastatra karanam bharasevanam Dharmatakama mokshakyam Yaditshe Shreya Atmanaha Ekam Yeva Harastatra Haranam Bharasevanam Dharmartha Kama Mokshakyam Yaditshe Shreya Atmanaha Ekam Yeva Harastatra Karanam Bharasevanam
Dharmartha-kama mokshakyam Ekam hyeva haristatra
Ladies. By the name, Yah, who, its jet, may desire, Shreya, the goal of life, Atmanaha, of the self, Ekam hi eva, only the one, Harehe, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Tatra, in that, Karanam, the cause, Parasevanam, worshipping the lotus feet. So this is a statement by Narada Muni. Any person, he's speaking to Dhruva Maharaj, any person who desires the fruits of the four principles, religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and at the end, liberation, should engage himself in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The worship of his lotus feet yields the fulfillment of all of these. I'll read it again. Any person who desires the fruits of the four principles, religiosity, dharma, economic development, artha, sense gratification, kama, and at the end, liberation, moksha, should engage himself in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For worship of his lotus feet yields the fulfillment of all of these. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that only with the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can the demigods offer benedictions. Therefore, whenever any sacrifice is offered to the demigods, the Supreme Lord, in the form of Narayan Shila or Shalagram Shila, is put forward to observe the sacrifice. Actually, the demigods cannot give any benediction without the sanction of the Supreme Lord. Narada Muni therefore advised that even for religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation, one should approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, offer prayers, and ask for the fulfillment of one's desire at the lotus feet of the Lord. That is real intelligence. An intelligent person never goes to demigods to pray for anything. He goes directly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all benedictions. As Lord Krishna has said in the Bhagavad Gita, performance of ritualistic ceremonies is not actually religion. The real path of religion is to surrender at the lotus feet of the Lord, and one who has actually surrendered to the lotus feet of the Lord, there is no question of any separate endeavor for economic development. A devotee engaged in service to the Lord is not disappointed in satisfaction of his senses. If he wants to satisfy his senses, Krishna fulfills that desire. As far as liberation is concerned, any devotee fully engaged in the service of the Lord is already liberated. Therefore, there is no separate necessity for his liberation. Narada Muni therefore advised Dhruva Maharaj to take shelter of Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, and engage himself in that way that his mother had advised, for that would help him fulfill his desire. In this verse, Narada Muni has especially stressed the devotional service to the Lord as the only way. In other words, even as one is full of material desires, he can continue his devotional service to the Lord, and all his desires will be fulfilled. Om Gyan Timidandasya Gyana Jana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Staptitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swam Padantikam Vandeham Shigaro Shigata Padakamalam Shigarun Vaishnavare Vrishabhanu Siti Devi Pranamami Hiri Priye Pancha Kalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhavacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. In the second canto of the Bhagavatam, it mentions the kama, sarvakama va, moksha kama udaradi, tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Preceding that verse, there is a series of verses, and one verse from verse number 2 to verse number 9, and number 8 verses altogether, there is recommendations that if one wants to fulfill any type of material desire, there's a particular way to do that. In other words, if one wants good family life, they worship the Vasus. If one wants a good wife, he can worship Lord Shiva. If one wants a good husband, they also can worship Shiva. A good wife, they can worship Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. So there's a whole long list for 8 verses. And if you want this, this is how you worship. So sometimes people think, this is the Bhagavatam? And this Bhagavatam is giving recommendations to fulfill material desires by worshiping the Devas. It confuses people. How is this Bhagavatam supporting or encouraging people in this way? But then, the following verse, the kama sarva karma moksha kama udaradi, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajeta Purusham Param is the next verse, which after giving you all of these recommendations for Deva worship and how to fulfill desires, it says, whether you have all material desires, whether you're self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge, or you want to worship the Supreme Lord in devotion, whatever activity you want to perform, in other words, karma, jnana, and bhakti, then worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So after giving all of these recommendations for Deva worship, it kind of just says, forget it. Just worship the Supreme Lord. Because, and as this verse, especially the purport, indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda. Vigraha Anadir Govinde Sarva Karnam Karnam. So that whatever is given by any agency in any way, in any either materially or semi-spiritually, we say the jnanis, or through, as is mentioned here, artha, kama, dhamma, and moksha. Anything, everything comes, but has to be sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. So no one can give any benedictions unless the Lord gives his permission or actually sanctions it himself. So here it's recommended, don't waste time with all of these worships of so many deities, because as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter, he says, whatever the demigods can give, it's coming from me, ultimately. And then he also goes on to say, those who worship the demigods are Rita Gyan. That the Rita means disturbed or deficient. And Gyan in this word means intelligence. That their intelligence is not very good. That they should not waste time, because the demigods, as it says here, cannot fill material desires unless Krishna gives the sanction. So why waste time with, all of this other worship? Because all of your desires, even if you have material desires, worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But then there's a problem. And that is that when you worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you lose your material desires. So people think, oh, that's dangerous. If I worship Krishna, he's going to take away those desires and all the facilities. But it's not like he leaves you with nothing. He gives you something better. If you're hungry and you haven't eaten for days, if somebody comes along with a dry chapati with no ghee on it and no salt, you think, oh, well, at least it's something to eat. So you take it. But then if you come and then somebody gives you this nice feast with kachoris and pakoras and sweet rice and ladus and paradas and pav bhaji, so many things. And you think, well, forget the dry chapati. So this is it. Trying to worship the demigods is like chasing after a dry chapati. Because Krishna, he'll give you something even better. He'll give you a taste, and that taste is so sweet that you lose your taste for everything material. And even sometimes, if he wants, and he does in many cases, he also gives you that material desire you want, even after you engage in devotional service. But then the devotee thinks, I don't want it anymore. Because now I have something better. And this is actually the whole purport of this particular pastime. What was Dhruva Maharaj's desire? He wanted a kingdom greater than his father, Uttanapada, his grandfather, uh, Swayambhuva Manu, and his great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. He wanted a kingdom better than Brahma. There was no such place. He had a desire that it was practically impossible. And he was willing to do anything to fulfill that desire. And the austerities that Dhruva performed, nobody can do those. I mean, he was living on roots and fruits for 6 months, and after a while, he gave up that. He was eating just dried leaves. Then he was taking a little water, and then he was doing the pranayama system. At one point, he was living simply on air. That's all. And meditating on the different parts of the transcendental body of the Lord in his mind and in his heart. He became so absorbed in the Lord, and he was performing such severe renunciation, nobody could ever even possibly come close to what he did. And he was only a 5-year-old boy. Lord Chaitanya would love to hear the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj. Gadadhar Pandit would read, and Lord Chaitanya would listen to the whole pastime. And then after he would finish, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would say, read it again. And then he would read the whole pastime again. And then he would say, read it again. And sometimes Lord Chaitanya would ask Gadadhar Pandit to read it up to 100 times. Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj was Lord Chaitanya's favorite pastimes. He loved them. He listened to it all day. So Dhruva Maharaj, his determination was fixed. I mean, nobody could sway his determination. In fact, he became so powerful, because austerities can make you powerful. Even in the material world, when a materialist performs austerity, sometimes you see politicians, they want to get elected into a particular office, so they perform some austerities. They eat a little bit, they travel everywhere, they go on campaign programs, they give it a little bit of sleep, they're, patting babies on the head, They're doing all kinds of things. It's just to get some popularity. And then they're neglecting their personal needs. And they become a little powerful because it's material, but it's still an austerity. And austerity will bring you, in that case, material power. Of course, devotees are not interested in that. But in Krishna consciousness, austerity is already built into the process of devotional service. So the austerity for the devotees is to chant Hare Krishna, not just 16 rounds. As Prabhupada said, that's the beginning. That's just to get you going. He said, Satatam Kirtanam, chant always. But Dhruva Maharaj was so determined, and he was meditating on the Lord in the heart, that he was holding his breath. He was breathing once every few days. He had mastered the pranayama system. So he wasn't even breathing normally. And because of that, he became the center of the universe. Now, all of the universal affairs were functioning on Dhruva. And because Dhruva had completely stopped all his functions, all of the universal activity stopped. And there was no air in the universe. And the demigods became really alarmed. And they went to the Lord. They went to the ocean, and on the ocean of Kshirodakshai Vishnu, and started praying to the Lord that, he's destroying our planets. And the Lord came just to save the universal affairs. Some people say he came to, benedict Dhruva, but Dhruva was only interested in seeing the Lord for something material. He didn't want the Lord for a devotional object. He wanted something from the Lord. He wanted that kingdom, which was practically impossible to get. But the Lord appeared to him. And then it's mentioned, not in the Bhagavatam, but in the Hari Sudodaya. Was it Hari Sudodaya? What is that scripture? Yeah, yeah. I can't remember the whole name of the scripture. Sudodaya is the last word. In there it describes that Prahlad, not Prahlad, but Dhruva, when he saw the Lord, he started to lament. He felt bad. He wanted that material desire. Now when he saw the Lord, that famous verse that Prabhupada quotes quite often, that I was chasing after broken pieces of glass, that means something material, but now I have found the rarest gem. Broken pieces of glass are not only not valuable, but they just litter up the streets. You see broken glass there, you want to get somebody to sweep it up fast. He compared his material desires to broken pieces of glass, but when he saw the Lord, his mind was completely illuminated with love for the Lord. And then the Lord took his conch shell and touched it on the head of Dhruva, and Dhruva started to offer beautiful prayers to the Lord. So this pastime with Dhruva Maharaj is a prime example of how chasing after material desires and doing whatever, as we mentioned, his austerities cannot be imitated, can't even be described. But still, the Lord came. And so in devotional service, as it says, if you have Krishna, you have everything. If you have everything and you don't have Krishna, Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam, you have nothing. Because everything is centered around Krishna. Service made nice progress. They got a taste for Krishna consciousness, and they no longer wanted their material desires, but Krishna gave it to them anyway. He gives it to them anyway. Just to say, well, here, thank you for your service to me. I'm going to offer you something. He did that with Prahlad Maharaj. When Prahlad Maharaj, after he liberated his father, Hiranyakasipu, and Prahlad came with a beautiful garland to offer to the Lord, and the Lord was feeling so much attraction and affection for Prahlad that he put him on his lap. And it was just a sweet exchange between the Lord and Dhruva. And then the Lord asked Dhruva, take a benediction. And Dhruva said, I'm not a Vanik. I'm not a merchant. I don't worship you for something material. I worship you out of love. But the Lord was so insistent. He didn't want to hear that Dhruva didn't want anything. When someone wants to give you something, they'll give it to you even if you don't want it. What is that special mercy? Just like sometimes someone will come up to you and say, my dear Prabhu, my dear Mataji, here's a donation for you. And they offer you some Lakshmi. And you say, oh, you're such a nice person, thank you, but you keep it. And then they want to give it to you, and you just say, no. And then they take it and they push it in your pocket. So you got it, whether you want it or not. So that's Krishna. He's like that. He'll even give you these things that are material because he knows it's not going to affect your devotional service. But if you're engaged in devotional service, and you're trying to fulfill your material desires, he may give it to you just to make you more enthusiastic in devotional service. But if he sees that by giving you a material benediction, you'll become less enthusiastic, you'll think that's the success of your worship, then he won't do it. because he doesn't want you to go away. He doesn't want you to go back to material life. So in certain cases he gives, in certain cases he doesn't. It's not like it's an absolute principle. Because the Lord knows everything, and he knows how to bring a person closer to him. But we see that many times, that when a devotee is fully engaged in devotional service, and they had so many material desires before, then Krishna wants to give them. There were devotees, they wanted power, they wanted some position, they wanted to preach, they wanted to be a leader in some area, and then they gave it up. And then after a while, after performing devotional service, Krishna gave them the position. Sounds familiar? It's like that. Then you think, I don't really want it, but I got it, so I guess I should serve the Lord in that way. So then it becomes whatever he gives in the for something apparently material, because it's engaged in devotional service, it's spiritual. The devotee will use it to serve the Lord and not try to gain something from that like that. So the purport of this whole verse is that just serve the Lord and don't divert one's attention to any other form of worship. Now we're coming into Kartik. This month is full of demigod worship. You all know that. There's pujas to Shiva, pujas to Ganesh, pujas to Durga, so many pujas. Pujas to save your husband, pujas to save your wife, pujas to make your brother better, sister pujas for brothers, brother pujas for sisters, so many pujas. But you see, if you follow the calendar, in all of these different recommended time periods where there's pujas for different devas, it ends right at Govardhan Puja. That's the last. So Krishna says, in Govardhan Hill, he says, because what was Govardhan Hill? The cowherd men wanted to worship Indra. And Krishna discouraged that whole thing and said, well, worship Govardhan, which is him himself. And he's actually, he appeared and also as Govardhan. It's not different than him. He's Giridhari. And so this pastime of Krishna worshiping Govardhan Hill is the culmination to teach you, hey, after all of these ideas of worshiping so many things, just worship me. I can hold up a mountain. The demigods can't. I can fulfill all of your desires perfectly and completely. But when he gives himself, which is very rare, but that is bhakti. The pure bhakti will attract Krishna in such a way that Krishna becomes the order giver, order supplier of the devotee, whatever the devotee wants. Because that's when the devotee has love for Krishna, then Krishna just wants to give as much as he can to reciprocate that loving relationship. But we don't want anything from Krishna. We want service. Therefore, when Srila Prabhupada was when Srila Prabhupada, there's a story with Srila Prabhupada. I can't remember, but the point was that Prabhupada was responding to a request for something. And he said, I just want to serve, that's all. When Prabhupada came to America, there's one pastime, he was sitting in a hotel room, very nice hotel room, with some of his associates who had been with him in Vrindavan when he was at the Radha Damodar temple. And he said, he was sitting there and he started to speak. Prabhupada was speaking. He said, do you remember how nice it was back in Radha Damodar temple. I was there, I had my room, it was so nice. I was in Vrindavan. I was feeling so happy. Then he said, I long to go back there. But then after he said that, he said, but that would be sense gratification. Prabhupada was revealing his heart that he was so happy. But he left all that because that was the order of his spiritual master to go to the West and preach Krishna consciousness. So he gave up all that, but still in his heart, he was remembering how wonderful it was just to be in Vrindavan at the Radha Damodar temple and worshiping the Lord, and worshiping the Goswamis, and just reading his books, preaching to the local. Prabhupada was so happy, but when he thought about it, he said, that's sense gratification. That's about me. My duty, my service is to spread Krishna consciousness around the world. So he rejected that idea. But he was showing that, yeah, the devotee may have those feelings, but it doesn't matter. The service to Krishna is what the devotee really wants. Because in that service to the Lord, everything is there. Artha, Kama, Dhamma, Moksha, and ultimately, ultimate happiness and eternal life in the spiritual world. So devotional service contains all of the benedictions that one can achieve, both materially and spiritual, anywhere. So those who are intelligent, those who have good intelligence, will take up devotional service. Krishna Varnam Tosa Krishna Sangoparga Saparsadam Yagyai Sankirtanai Prayai Yajanti Hi Sumeda Saha. That one, Sumedasa means intelligence and Su means good. And those who have good intelligence will take up the process of worshiping the Supreme Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by engaging in the Sankirtan movement. And then Prabhupada goes on to say, this word Su is very important. It means good. It means developed. He says, but not like Alpamedasa. Alpamedasa means brain filled with cow dung. We like cows, but cow dung is not to be put into the brain. Although it's very auspicious. So what Prabhupada was saying is that people who don't understand their best interests will look for success in other areas. Those who actually understand their best interests, then ultimately it's devotional service. Yasyati bhakti bhagavati akinchana savai gauras sasisamartute sara arava bhakta kuto mahagunam manoratena sati dayato bahi. That even if you're expert at so many material things, it's temporary. It cannot give you. And even if you get some benedictions from the demigods, whatever they give, Krishna says those are temporary and they cannot give you real satisfaction. So after explaining, the Shastras go through so much explanation of what you can get from all kinds of worship. But then it comes right down to the end, just worship Krishna, that's all. Exclusive worship. And Krishna is like that. If you focus your attention 100% on devotional service and worship according to your given direction by your temple president, by your spiritual master, you'll find that everything that you want in life is there and more. And you become really happy. That's Krishna consciousness. And just by coming to the temple and seeing the beautiful form of Radha Damodar, Gaurnitai, Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, that's an experience of happiness, just seeing these beautiful deities. That's Krishna there in that transcendental form. And the more your bhakti is there, the more you can feel Krishna's presence in the deity. You can actually see Krishna there. It's not longer a deity anymore, it's actually Krishna. So, yeah, devotional service actually gives you the association of Krishna through the holy name, through his deity, through prasadam, through transcendental knowledge, through activities, all of these things connected with Krishna. And when you're with Krishna, then as that verse says, then what is the use of anything else? Bilba Mangala Thakur makes a nice prayer in his Krishna Karnamrita. He says, "My dear Lord, with you, what is the use of anyone else? And without you, what is the use of anybody else?" So he says it in the same way. With you, what else is there? There's nothing. And without you, I don't want anything else anyway. I only want you. So he makes the point that even if I don't have you, there's nothing out there that I want either. I just want you. Beautiful prayer. He illustrates that ultimately Krishna is everything. He's also called Mula. Mula means root. He's the root, he's the source of everything. So how do you get Krishna? The first thing is you have to want Krishna. And as you perform your activities with a desire to get Krishna, that desire to want Krishna will grow more and more. Because Krishna is all attractive. And so hearing, chanting the glories of the Lord, we might say, is the fast track to attaining our attraction for Krishna and ultimately achieving shelter at his lotus feet. To hear and chant Sravanam, Kirtanam, Krishna Smarnam. This is the essence of devotional service. So the process is easy. Narada Muni tried to dissuade or divert Dhruva away from his austerities, just to test him, to see how determined he was. We were talking yesterday in our meeting here with some of the leaders, the importance of determination. And Prabhupada writes, and it's in this same chapter, I'll actually read it, it's a few verses back here. It's interesting. It's worth reading. It's verse number 30. I'll read the purport. It's short. Prabhupada says, the process of bhakti yoga is simultaneously very difficult and very easy to perform. Makes sense? Simultaneously, very difficult and very easy. Sri Narada Muni, the supreme spiritual master, is testing Dhruva just to see how determined he is to prosecute devotional service. This is the process of accepting a disciple. The guru must test the disciple just to see how sincere they are. I know one lady, she's in London, she was telling me, she said that when she took shelter of her spiritual master, she wasn't married at the time. He told her, you live in the ashram for 2 years. No, 1 year, 1 year. He said, you first live in the ashram and you live in the association of devotees and live within the temple for 1 year. And that's my instructions for you. She didn't want to do it. She wasn't used to that kind of life. And she was, not so young. Well, she was young. She was in her late 20s. But she didn't want to do it. But that was the instruction. And then she did it. She surrendered. And after 1 year, she said she just loved being in the ashram. She was so happy. And her spiritual master was so satisfied. And then after that, she left. And then got married, had a nice children, and also became a very favored disciple of her spiritual master. He gives her a lot of responsibility. So he tested her just to see how sincere they were. And so The spiritual master will do that to you, so don't get discouraged. Don't think it's too difficult. It's meant for your purification. It's like when you go to any college or university, you have to pass the test before you can get the diploma. Some of the tests are not easy, but you can't get that graduation unless you pass the test. So the spiritual master and Krishna many times together will test you. So you might think Krishna consciousness is too difficult. But then it says, is it difficult or easy? And then the Prabhupada says, the great sage Narada has come to Dhruva under the directions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead just to initiate him. Yet he is testing Dhruva's determination to execute the process of devotional service. And Prabhupada ends. It is a fact, however, that for a sincere person, devotional service is very easy. But for one who is not determined and sincere, this process is very difficult. So there's the bottom line. If you're determined, it's easy. If you're not, it's hard or difficult. So that determination is the foundation. And determination, then we were discussing that yesterday. How do you get determination if you're not determined? And then there's two ways. One is internal and one is external. The external way is to associate with devotees who are determined. By that association, you become like that. You also develop that mood of determination. And the external one is give up sense gratification. When one of his godbrothers went preaching in London before Prabhupada came to the West, they met one Lord Jetland. And this Lord had spent time in India, and he knew a little bit about Indian culture. And Lord Jetland was preaching to this devotee, Prabhupada's godbrother, was preaching to Lord Jetland. And then Lord Jetland said, "Can you make me a brahmana?" And the devotee said, "Yes. What do I have to do?" Pretty bad English accent, but anyway, I'm trying. What do I have to do? And he said, well, you follow these four principles: no illicit sex, no intoxication, no become a Brahmin. Didn't he? And Mr. Jetland said, that is impossible. That is our life. So when Prabhupada came to the West, in America, he said, I came to give you something impossible. So let me try anyway. So devotional service is easy if we're determined. That means we have to give up those things that are blocking our determination. And when you're determined, it's easy because it becomes natural. Determination is not something you have to do, it becomes part of you. It becomes a quality that you develop. Oh, this person's very determined. That's their character. That's their quality. That's their personality. It's no longer like, well, I have to become determined. No. You actually get to that point where determination is natural. And when you're determined, then the process is easy. Easy means that whatever you are doing, you do it with full confidence. It may be difficult, may be hard. It's like Prabhupada quoted that verse by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Javyasatmika buhir ekeha kuranandana buhu sakya yanatascha bureyo vayasahino. But those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. He says, "O beloved child of the Kurus," Krishna speaking to Arjuna, "those whose intelligence is many-branch, they're irresolute." So Prabhupada said this is the process of determination, to become focused, one-pointed. And he said, when I started this movement, I was meditating on this verse. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti gives a commentary after he speaks the book. He says, whether it's easy or it's difficult, doesn't matter. Easy and difficult doesn't even come into the mind of the devotee. It's devotional service, that's all. And that is the principle of determination. So Prabhupada said, because I focused on that one point, I didn't consider whether it's easy or not. I just went ahead in my devotional service, completely depending on Krishna. And Krishna did everything. He gave me so many devotees, he gave me so much Lakshmi, we opened so many temples, we translated so many books. This was all Krishna's grace, simply because I followed the instructions of my spiritual master with determination. So that's the process. And then all of one's desires for happiness and success, both material or spiritual, are automatically included in devotional service. Okay, Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Last question.
There's a question over there.
Krishna Maharaj, no Maharaj. So we are all curious to know how you came to Krishna consciousness, if you can briefly tell us, to inspire us.
I'm still coming. I'll let you know when I get there. I thought material life was very boring. I thought there was no substance to material life. I couldn't see any juice in material life. And then I was just floating around looking for some juice somewhere. Couldn't find it anywhere. And then I met the devotees. So all the juice that I was drinking was Corella juice. Then I found some mango juice.
Mango juice.
So material life is like that. What is that verse? Prahlad Maharaj says, chewing the chewed. Puna puna sitya. Yeah. So if you get to that stage, then that's a benediction. You can see that there's no happiness in material life. Mhm.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj, for such a wonderful class. Maharaj, I have a question, like you told about the determination. There are 2 points to take into action, internal and external. Maharaj, like if sometimes we feel and we get determined, but after some time that determination loses a lot,
Hmm.
and then it comes, then loses a lot. So it's like a cycle. So
Hmm.
how to carry?
That means it's not completely developed yet. There's still something there that is causing you to lose that determination. That means some material attachments, material tendencies. Something is there that interferes with your steady determination. And that is usually, it may not be a material desire, but it may be some material contamination that is still there. But if you become aware that it goes up and down, and when you see it going down, then you just bring it back automatically. You just become determined. You understand it's the right thing to do. So even if you don't, just like it says, there was one devotee, very enthusiastic, always for everything. He was a leader in our movement. His name was Vishnu Jan Swami Maharaj. Everything he did was with such enthusiasm and such spiritual relish, joy. And the devotees would ask him, Maharaj, how do you do it? He said, I don't always feel like that, but I act like that. So that in Krishna consciousness, it works. Even if you don't feel like it, do it. And then you'll feel like it. Mm. That's how Krishna comes. Because it's natural. It's part of the soul's character. So you're acting in a way that is actually you, although you may not feel it. And if you practice that, then it becomes part of you. Because it is you already. The soul has all good qualities. But the mind and the senses interfere with that. And we get diverted away from that. So we don't listen to our mind. We don't listen to our intelligence when it wants to take us away from Krishna consciousness. We just reject that. So, yeah, so as Vishnu Jan Maharaj used to say, I may not always feel like that, but I act like that. So that's perfect. Because by acting, you will actually feel like, because it's not acting, it's actually reality. The real acting is that when we act in material life, that's fake, that's phony, that's not us. That's just a covering over the soul. The soul is pure and has all good qualities. Yes, we have a couple of one question there.
Krishna, thank you so much, Maharaj, for your wonderful insight and lot of realization in his past steps. So, Maharaj, I was reading like Dhruv Maharaj performed a serious austerity, and then he had a darshan of the Lord Vishnu directly.
Right.
But after that, he took the kingdom and started running very nicely. And then his brothers were killed with the yakshas.
Right.
And then, although he was a king, so he wanted to protect it. It was his duty.
Mm-hmm.
He got so angry, that then Lord Manu, I think, Manu came to pacify him.
Yeah, first Kuvera came because
The
he's
first Kuvera came.
he was a leader of the Yakshas. Yeah.
So, like, just the concept of anger, that somebody who has see the God and realize the God after performing austerity, and then again coming to the something like a material platform where he is
Apparently something is material there.
okay. So because therefore he coming and pacifying and correcting this not good food, even the exceeded. You have increased your limit now, which is not good. Unnecessary feeling.
Yeah.
One was okay, but now you like
He's trying to kill a whole race of Yakshas. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's a Kshatriya also. And Kshatriyas get angry. Brahmins get angry, but they can cool down fast. And Kshatriyas, they boil a little bit. It's a different varna. So yeah, but that question came up a few times, and I can't remember. Karanga Darshan Prabhu was discussing that one also. It apparently looks like he was acting. Now he had become a devotee, but he was actually acting in some way that was contrary to a devotee. So it's hard to understand, but when he got the advice, he stopped. He did stop. Sometimes, you're sitting there and your favorite food is coming. You haven't had it in a long time. So you start eating and they're bringing more of it. So maybe it's, I don't know, think of your favorite food and it keeps coming. And you think, oh, wow, this is ecstasy. But then you're getting full. And then you start thinking, I think I had enough, but it's still there. And the taste is still there. And you think, well, just a little more. Maybe a little more. I don't do this always, all the time. So, yeah, sometimes devotees get carried away. And they do something that will hurt their devotional life, or it's apparently contrary to our devotional life. But then they realize it's wrong, or they stop. Maybe they get some advice or something. So sometimes a devotee will fall into acting, but apitet suracharo bhajate nandamanyabhak sarveva samantabhya ravyasa hiho hisa. And even if the devotee does something abominable, still, because they're engaged in devotional service, they're still considered to be saintly. And not only are they saintly, but anyone who recognizes them to be saintly, although they've deviated from devotional service by acting materially or even sinfully, those who see that are also considered to be saintly. There's a nice exchange between the demigods and Lord and Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Bhakti Vinod Thakur is with the demigods. And they're asking him about this verse. What is the actual meaning of this verse? Apichet Sudaracharo. And then he actually explains it's not only the person, but even those who see that person as being saintly, they also are righteous. They also are saintly. Because devotional service is so powerful, it burns away all of one's contamination. So you see, sometimes it happens a great devotee will do something that'll be contrary to devotional service. But then they'll stop, they'll get corrected, they'll get a little punishment, and then they'll pick up and then they'll get back in devotional service. And it's like it never happened. Krishna doesn't see, he sees now. That person is back. And that's all he cares. So yeah, it happens at times. So that's the case with Dhruva also. And he went back to his anger because it was anger that inspired him to take up devotional service. He was angry at his stepmother. And he was so angry that he was crying. He was only 5 years old. His mother pacified him and said, if you want your desires fulfilled, only Krishna can do that. And you have to go to the forest and worship him. So he wanted revenge against his stepmother and his stepbrother also. And Krishna fulfilled that. Both of them died in that fire. Because he was a pure, this is very, you got to think about this one. If you offend a devotee, and that devotee becomes a pure devotee, Haribol, you better do something to get free from that reaction. So you might think, well, I just offended this ordinary devotee here. That's not so important. But if that ordinary devotee becomes a pure devotee, that offense will catch up with you. and then you're getting a reaction for that. Yeah, so that's what happened when Dhruva actually became purified. Then Krishna actually gave them the reactions of their offense against Dhruva. And both of them died in that fire. But Dhruva was feeling unhappy because his brother was killed by the Yaksha. His mother died in the fire, his stepmother. Yeah. But Dhruva didn't have any personal feelings against him anymore. But then he took action against the Yakshas for. So a Kshatriya, so there's many. Ultimately, he can't be criticized for that because ultimately he stopped. He took the advice of Swayambhuva Manu. Even Kuvera says, he knew these yakshas were rascals. He even said that. He said they're just a worthless bunch. But still, he didn't want Dhruva to kill them. But he even said, they're what they are, yakshas. And yakshas are in the mode of ignorance. They're in the mode of ignorance, deep in the mode of ignorance. So sometimes a devotee, even though they're very elevated, they may do something that is contrary. But after some time, they stop. They check themselves and they go and they get back to pure devotional service. It happens. It shouldn't happen, but it does. Does that help a little? It's a good question. If you see Gauranga Darshan, ask him. He's got more detailed explanation than I do. Any other questions? I saw a few other hands somewhere.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much. I really the main takeaway today is like determination. Bhakti is easy and difficult as well at the same time. So I really love that point. Thank you so much. My question, Maharaj, is that we know that we have to be determined. But for something which we can control, we can be determined. But at times in the life, there are situations, there are normal things also, very small things also, which is something beyond your control, and then you get carried away with the things. Then how you handle those things? So, it's not that we want to be in a devotional service. That's why I think we are trying.
There's some sentiment there. Due to past association, past activities, still have some sentimentality to certain situations. It's not like you're attached to it, but there's some sentiment. There's some sentiment. Sentiment means there's some feeling of attraction for it. Yeah. Just like you've given up, so many things. Just say, I don't know, you've given up some food that is not the best, but you liked it. And now you're in Krishna consciousness, you're getting prasadam. So you pass by the food stand and there it is. And it smells so good. It reminds you of the past. You think, it's not going to hurt just one time. No, it's not that you're going to become overwhelmed and attached to it, but there's some sentiment there because of past experience. These are just residues of some material taint that's still there based on sentimentality. Some sentiment, some feeling for attraction. You see the point? It's not a real material desire, it's just like if you put out a fire, there's still some smoke around. So we put out the fire material desires, but there's still some smoke floating around, and that may attract us yet. But it's not a regular thing, it just happens by circumstance. So if you want to avoid that, avoid the circumstance, and then you won't be victimized. You avoid that circumstance that could cause you to develop some affection or attraction for that. Yes, in the back. But don't get discouraged. Just stop it and pick up in your devotional service. That's all. It's not a fall down, it's just a little deviation. If you continue in that way, it could lead to fall down. Yes.
What I got the one point which I could take from the lecture is like we are acting as say someone's son, someone's husband, someone's employee, but in reality we are the servants of God. And if we are not doing that service, then we get frustrated. That is what I could get. And my question is, like as it was mentioned in the purport, that we are not obliged to do any demigod worship or any other worship. So, contrary to the Western world, in India we have
Tradition.
some kind of like
It's in the culture.
yeah, it's in the
You
culture.
grew up with it, and people are doing it. It's part of the, you might say, Indian culture. It's very strong. And so the relatives call you. We're going to do a little puja for Ganesh. Come. And you think, I don't want to go, but the relatives will become angry with me. Just to make them happy, I go. Yeah. So you go, just don't take any prasad, that's all. Yeah, it's there, it's strong. Because it's something it's an impressionable experience. It still has left an impression on us. And there's other people who are connected to us to remind us about why we should be doing it too. So I'm not saying you should. In fact, I'm saying you shouldn't. Because if you live by truth, you live. If you live by what's convenient, you'll be unhappy. You say, yeah. You say you feel disturbed by that. Yeah, you should be. Therefore, avoid it. The relatives may not understand or may understand, but that doesn't matter. If you're living for truth, then you're living. It's like our Giriraj Swami. When he was first joined the Hare Krishna movement, he came from a very wealthy family. And his father, I mean, this was back in the 70s. His father was a millionaire. He was a very highly placed judge. And he offered his son $1 million if he left Krishna consciousness. But he didn't do it. So after many years of practicing Krishna consciousness, not many, after a few years, he was with Prabhupada in Juhu, and he was helping Prabhupada with the Juhu project. And his parents, mother and father, came to see him. And his mother was saying to Prabhupada, oh, he looks so skinny, he's not eating right. He was making, and his father was there. And his father offered Prabhupada $1 million if he would send his son back to the family. This time he tried Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, you ask him. Prabhupada diverted it. He said, you can ask him. Prabhupada didn't say anything. He just said, you ask him. And then again, he offered his son $1 million after he had been in the movement for a few years. Again, he refused. If you talk to him, he feels happy that he refused. And if you go back 50 years, $1 million is about $10 million now in terms of and how money has devaluated. It's really a lot. In those days, it was a lot of money. Nowadays, it's not so much. But live by principle, live by truth, and then you live. So Maya will be there to, she'll look for that little thing that attracts you and try to see. She's testing you just to see how serious you are in your spiritual life. She knows how to test you. She always tests you in a way that it hurts the most. It's that thing that you're still attached to a little bit. But if you stay focused on the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service, you'll always be happy. Always. And even if you don't feel happy, you'll understand, I did the right thing. You'll feel happy that you did the right thing. Does that help? Any other questions? I think we're getting a little late here, okay? Devotees have other services. And as they say, you cannot live by philosophy alone. It's Adira Vidyajao Jatendriya Tahekaham. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Sri Dhruva Maharaj ki, no more demigod worship ki. I didn't hear everybody on that one. No more demigod worship ki. Try it again. No more demigod worship ki. That's getting better, but still not everybody yet. So we try one more time. No more demigod worship ki. Hey, okay. Giri Govardhan ki jai.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for the wonderful insights and lot of realization. And Maharaj is the best person to give this, lecture this first. Maharaj is already giving Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Devotional classes, Bhakti Shastri classes. So he's very deep into the Shastra. So you see how, very softly, very lightly, the juice is coming, juice is coming in the heart, and the heart was feeling a little more and more and more and more it's filled. I said, I just keep on hearing new questions and different dimensions of this purport and Maharaj's devotional service to the Lord and how he's focusing. So Maharaj's austerity can make you very powerful. Just if you feel like this note it down. And lower lords knows what betrayal to that. Even politicians they perform austerity for the power of post. If you have Krishna, you have everything. Many devotees have been rid of that disappeared after when they accept Krishna consciousness. So the wonderful point Maharaj and Maharaj said that Krishna Prabhupada's thing going back to Radha Damodar Bandhaji certification. So he wanted to preach in the Western countries. So for him, the service to the spiritual master is such an important thing. And it's not that no more deities, it's Krishna himself. Krishna himself. He talked about the importance of determination and he talked about how the Narada was testing Guru Maharaj for quoting his 38 shlokas. How to develop determination? Internal, external. Internal by association with the devotee, and it's become so easy. And Maharaj talked about focus determination. He explained that shloka externally by giving up these sense gratifications. It's tough. And then Maharaj gave the example that how Prabhupada, once Prabhupada preaching in the Western country, and one person came to want to become Brahmana. So Prabhupada told him all that, the principle. He said, impossible. so giving up such gratification is very difficult. So therefore, yeah. So it's a quality that we have to develop. It's a natural. Material life is like Kerala juice. Spiritual life is like a mango juice. Yeah. So then Maharaj asks us, same sine waves. What will you answer? Determination goes like second. What will you answer? What will you answer?
Like you have to add if you do.
Yeah, so it's due to material desires. It's due to the material desire. So, and also last, I don't feel, but I act like this. What word? Who said this? This one is? Vishnu Swami Maharaj. And then there's so many, such a nice rules we extracted from your lectures, Maharaj. It's so fulfilling. So we love to have your whole association devotee. Yes or no? Yes. Bas? So whenever you hear Maharaj, we really love to have your whole association. We want to learn more and more such realizations. So thanks again. We can thank you, Maharaj, by loudly chanting.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Kartik Mas Mahamahotsav ki Jai. His Holiness Chandrmauli Swami Maharaj ki